Okay, we are live.
Thank you and good evening. Welcome to the reorganization meeting of the Northern Lebanon School District. I'm Attorney PreK from Stock & Leader. I'll be serving to open up our meeting this evening. Our first step in a reorganization meeting in a non-election year is to first seek if there's any public comment that's been registered right now relative to the reorganization process. Can whomever's in charge of that tell me whether there is any public comment?
There was no public comment.
Thank you, Dr. Messinger. With that, it's my opportunity to open the floor for nominations for the position of temporary president. The position of temporary president is the individual who runs the essentially the election of officers through the office of president. The temporary president has no power other than to run this meeting and to transition that authority back to an elected president. They also have the authority in election years to administer the oath of office, but we don't have any open seats, and this is a non-election year. So primarily, that individual just takes the gavel for a few minutes and will ultimately help select that president position. So with that in mind, I would now open the floor for nominations for a temporary president to be elected from the board members. Is there a nominee?
I nominate Director Klein.
Thank you. Is there a second for that nomination?
I'll second the nomination.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, if there are no other nominations, the nominations will be deemed closed. All those in favor of Mr. Klein serving as temporary president indicate by saying aye. Those opposed indicate by saying no.
Aye. Aye.
I hear all in the affirmative, so that should be recorded in the minutes. At this point, I will turn the meeting over to Mr. Klein to move forward to the election of a board president.
All right. Thank you, Brooke. As the temporary board president, I will now open the floor for nominations for board president. Do I have any nominations?
I'll nominate Dr. Michelle Bucks for president.
I second.
I nominate Mary Nam for vice president.
I think we're going to do that after this. Do we have any other nominations for president? All right. If none, the nominations are now closed. Congratulations, Dr. Oh, sorry. All those in favor of Dr. Bucks as board president indicate by saying aye. All those opposed indicate by saying no.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Dr. Bucks is now elected as board president. Congratulations. And I'll now turn the meeting over to our newly elected president, Dr. Bucks.
Thank you. And I want to take a moment to say thank you to all of you for your confidence moving forward. I will now open the floor for nominations for vice president.
Nominate Mary Nam for vice president.
Is there a second?
Second.
Are there any other nominations? I will now close the floor to nominations. All those in favor of Director Nam as vice president indicate by saying aye. Those opposed indicate by saying no.
Aye.
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 I heard all saying aye, so all votes were in the affirmative. And Director Nam, congratulations, you are now elected as vice president.
Thank you.
Moving forward with the rest of the items on our agenda for this evening. The next item is the date, time, and place of our board meetings for next year, 2021. Mrs. Say, do we vote on all of these items? Okay, that's what I thought. I just wanted to double check. All right, so on the agenda, we have listed all of the meeting dates for the committee meetings as well as the voting meetings. or the regularly scheduled board meetings. Note that some of these are listed as needed, and so if we need those meetings, that will be published. They are planned to be held in the middle school, high school library, but of course, if necessary, we will move to the virtual format. Are there any comments on those items? May I have a motion to approve the proposed meeting dates?
I move to approve the proposed meeting dates.
May I have a second?
I'll second.
Is there any discussion? This is a unanimous roll call vote. Your vote will be recorded in the affirmative unless you say nay or I abstain. The motion has passed. The next item is to designate a newspaper for all legal notices. We have been using Lebanon Daily News. Are there any comments or questions of what newspaper we should use moving forward?
Brooke, is there an opportunity to utilize an online newspaper at this point?
I wish that there was. The legislation needs to change to adopt to meet the times. Unfortunately, right now, advertising, public notices, school district and municipal are one of the ways that newspapers are surviving. So the lobbying for maintaining this requirement is still very strong.
Okay, I know that people a lot of times, even though it's in the newspaper, say they don't see things. And
Yes.
that's because Lebanon Daily News probably doesn't circulate a ton of papers, but I don't know that there's a better option.
Yeah, you can certainly advertise anything you put in the newspaper also on your website, but for now, it still needs to be maintained in that actual print. And unless you have something that's a bit more of general circulation for the area, it doesn't seem like you have another good option.
No, I don't think we do.
Yeah, it's a great question though. We've all been rooting for that for a number of years. It hasn't changed.
So do we wish to continue with Lebanon Daily News as our newspaper, or are there any other suggestions there? Then may I have a motion to designate Lebanon Daily News as the newspaper for general circulation for district notices?
I move.
May I have a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? This is a unanimous roll call vote. Your vote will be recorded in the affirmative unless you say nay or I abstain. The motion has passed. Is there any old business for discussion this evening? Hearing none, then we will move to the last item on the agenda for reorganization this evening, and that is appointment of representatives. We have 3 representatives that need appointment this evening. The first is Lebanon County TCC Executive Committee. Dr. Messinger, did you want to talk at all about that role?
Nothing in particular. I don't. Who was in that role? I don't even know.
There's no one serving on that committee now. Previously, it was our assistant business manager.
Steve, yeah, we had Steve serve in that. So we can certainly do that if no one else wants to do that. But it's not a very time-consuming commitment.
Do we have anyone that wishes to step up for that role or has any questions?
If you'd like, I certainly can talk with Leanne and Kayla about that.
Meaning that we don't have to fill that tonight?
I haven't discussed it with Mr. Perez yet. Brooke, is that okay to have that
Yeah.
conversation?
It can remain unfilled and you can fill it at the next meeting. I mean, it's typically just the president who appoints people who are willing to serve.
Okay.
Okay. All right, then we will circle back around to that committee. The next committee chairperson is for legislative representative and PSBA liaison. Are there any directors that wish to fill that role?
I don't mind staying on if no one else wants to fulfill the role.
All right, if nobody else has interest in that, then I would appoint Director Sekelic to remain in that role. And next is Lebanon County Area VOTEC School Authority. Joanne Beaver represents the district in that role. Her 4-year term expires or expired November 2020. I am not familiar with this role. Dr. Messinger, do you have any comments on that?
No, I don't.
Should we circle back to that one as well?
Yeah, we can do that. I hate to speak about the commitment, the time commitment to it, without talking to Joanne about it.
Okay.
I don't want to see someone volunteer for something that they wind up having a conflict with. So let me get the time commitment on that, and
Okay.
so that we can make an educated decision.
All right, that sounds good. The other items are not items of action, just informational items. Our Lebanon County CTC rep is Director Klein, and our alternate is Director Marlowe. They will continue in that role unless they choose not to until December 2022. Our Lancaster Lebanon Joint Authority, Joanne Beaver, is in that role until January 2022. And our IU13 representative is Director Murray, and she will remain in that role until June 30th, 2022. Is there anything else for the good of the order this evening? Hearing none, then I just want to say a year ago, we did a lot of changeover. There was a whole lot of change in with our board, with our leadership. And I just want to say how happy I am that we all pulled together right at the start, that we communicated well throughout the year, that we spoke respectfully, that we listened to alternative viewpoints. Even before the pandemic hit, which I think all of these things were even more important at that point. And hopefully moving into 2021, we can get back to a more normal-ish year and do kind of normal things that school boards do. So I thank you all for working together as a team really diligently throughout the past year. And I look forward to hopefully a more normal-ish year in 2021. And with that, I call this meeting adjourned. Thank you. So are we moving right into with no break before? Okay.
Somebody needs a break.
Does anybody need a restroom break or anything?
I think Dr. Messinger could use a break, just in general.
Yeah.
That vaccine's coming.
Do we stay on this Zoom link or get on a new one? This one, okay.
All right.
Joe.
I'm sorry?
Say, go ahead.
Okay. You're a little tough to hear. Okay.
I do think we're getting some feedback. If folks that aren't speaking could mute their microphones, we could probably eliminate a lot of it.
All right. Good evening and welcome to the December 1st, 2020 Northern Lebanon School Board meeting. I now call this meeting to order. This meeting is being recorded. Thank you for joining us virtually this evening. Please know that all webinar community member participants will remain on mute during the meeting unless they have put in a request to speak during the public comment period. Those wishing to make public comment were asked to submit that request by 4 o'clock this evening via email or online form. Item 1.2 on the agenda is our roll call. Mrs. Martin, may I have a roll call, please?
Ray,
Here.
Erdman,
Here.
Fowler,
Here.
Marlowe,
Here.
Murray. Murray.
Here.
Klein,
Here.
Zakalik, Here. Nom,
Present.
Bucks.
Here.
All members present.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is adoption of the agenda. May I have a motion to adopt the agenda as presented?
So moved.
May I have a second?
I'll second.
Is there any discussion? This is a unanimous roll call vote. Your vote will be recorded in the affirmative unless you say nay or I abstain. The motion has passed. Moving on to presentations, we have we have several presentations this evening. The first is from Crabtree, Rohrbaugh and Associates. Are they on here?
Kirk, have they joined yet? We told them, we thought it would be a little longer. We told them about 6 o'clock. If they haven't, we can continue and we can get them on at 6 o'clock. Oh, Scott's here.
Looks like
I was here. They had to switch me over.
Okay. Is there anybody, are you doing the whole shooting match tonight or?
I think Chad from Steckbeck has he's going to talk about the approval schedule.
Okay. Kirk, can you see if Chad is on there?
I don't see him on here. I'm keeping an eye out.
Okay. Why don't you
And I
keep,
can
what's that?
I said I can cover that if he's not here as well. So
Okay. Well, do you want to wait a couple minutes and we'll do the other ones quickly or do you want to go ahead?
no, we can go ahead.
Okay. All right. Are you screen sharing or Kirk, are you screen?
Kirk's handling that for me. There we go.
Okay.
So if we can go to the agenda slide. So I know you have a full agenda tonight, so we'll try to be brief, but certainly any questions along the way, ask them. We're just going to give you an update on where we're at with the elementary school design. We have response, I believe, there's some questions last time about capacity and classroom size. So we have some slides to talk about that. We'll talk about just where we're at with the schedule and give you a general update. One of our upcoming milestones is the Act 34 hearing. We'll talk about that and its purpose, and then we'll go through some of the athletic facility improvement options that we've developed a little further. Next slide. Next slide. So one of the questions that was posed at the last board meeting was, what can we anticipate for an average class size? Or how many students will be in each one of these classes now that we're going to combine schools to one building. And if you recall, we talked about having 8 classrooms for kindergarten and then 7 classrooms for each from 1st through 6th. And then we have 1 additional flex classroom that's meant to handle any bubbles as they pass through. So the chart you see there in the upper right hand corner of the slide looks at the quantity of classrooms and then takes your current enrollment and simply divides those students among each of the classrooms to get a class size. So you can see there, class sizes range from the low 18s and 19s to upwards of 26 and 25 and 28 for 5th grade. Now, one of the things Dr. Messinger mentioned last time, and that we've incorporated in the design, you can see there the floor plan where we've had some of these spaces circled. These are various learning support or special education classrooms that are kind of sprinkled throughout the floor plans. And then you'll see there on the second floor and the first and second grade wing on the bottom left, you'll see that flex classroom circled. So really, day one, that's not designated to any grade level. So that's meant to handle, let's say fourth grade, you have a bubble class coming through there and you have a larger class size and you want to get the class size down to a more manageable number. You could take that learning support in the fourth grade wing, locate it over to where that flex classroom is and use that as a general classroom on the fourth grade wing and go from 7 to 8 in that arrangement. So that's kind of how this plan is built to handle your ebb and flow of your different enrollment scenarios as you move through the years. And then of course, if you down the road, 10 years down the road, you've experienced basically flat enrollment for the past 10, 15 years. But in the future, let's say you do experience a spike that's sustained, then there is the ability to add on classroom space to each one of these wings at the end. But you would have to really experience a significant increase in your overall enrollment to get to that point. So, Dr. Go ahead.
I'll piggyback off of that just to say there is a lot of flexibility at this point with those learning support spaces. And then even if you look at the rooms next to those green circles, that wall in between can be removed and create an additional space as well. Each year you go through, from a superintendent / principal perspective, you would look at your class sizes and we would talk about those and make decisions about whether or not to add a teacher for the year if the numbers are high. So for instance, this year at fifth grade in Jonestown, we were going to have 29 and 30. And we wound up, we didn't have, this year there wasn't even a discussion because of COVID. We knew we had to reduce that number. And so we added a teacher. So even if you look at the 28 there, that doesn't mean that I have to keep it at 28. We could add a teacher and reduce it. And there'd be a variety of factors there. But there is a lot of flexibility with the building to move things around if need be for unusual classes that come through.
I don't see a number for pre-K. Is there a number for enrollment class size for pre-K if we do that?
No, I mean pre-K. If we do the pre-K versus, you mean a Head Start type of situation. Currently, right now, we just have that one class at Jonestown. But if we do the pre-K, we would decide how many kids that we would be able to take, and then there are 2 classrooms for the pre-K, but we would want to cap that. Obviously, if we have 135 kids that are coming to kindergarten volume, we're not putting 135 kids in 2 classes. So you would take, a certain number, say 30 kids, 15 in each classroom. We would make that decision if we decided to run that class ourselves. Good question.
Any other questions on class size?
And Rachel, this was we used our current number in class numbers now. So that's why also there's no pre-K, because we don't currently.
Yeah, I was just looking at the element, like the kindergarten being at 138. That's why I was asking that, but you just kind of explained it through. So I was a little concerned when I saw 2 small rooms with that number.
Is the kindergarten wing 2 stories also, or is that 1?
The kindergarten wing is just 1 story.
Would it be built to be with the possibility of a second story on top of it? Or
yeah, that's a good question. That's often something we get asked. And when you look at just the cost and the disruption that building on top of another building would cause, you actually have plenty of site area to add on to the end of each of those wings. So I'd say that would be your first choice to do versus building up. It'll probably be about 1.5 to 2 times the cost to build on top of that. In addition, that's one of the things we thought about as we looked at expansion as well. How do you expand that kindergarten wing? Because you have the district administration office at the end of it, And I think the answer is there. You grow in the kindergarten into the pre-K, and you add on, you construct the pre-K addition somewhere else. So, but good question. Any other thoughts on capacity? Okay, we'll go to the next slide. So this is a schedule overview that you've seen before, with the design, bid, and construction schedule of each of the projects you've identified in your study. We did get some good recent comments from the public and questions on the schedule and timing and approvals and things like that. So we thought we would take the opportunity to go dive a little bit more deep into that and let you know where we're at with the approval process. Did Chad join the call yet? If not, I can handle that. If you want to go to the next slide. So this is kind of the back of the scenes look at what that schedule entails when we talk about the design window of on the approval side of things. So you can see there, these all deal with the land development approvals of the site. So anytime you develop a site and develop over an acre, you have to go through a land development process. And there's various regulatory agencies that are involved in that process. So obviously that starts with the township, and they have to enforce their codes and ordinances, and we have to abide by them. They review the plans, and we have some back and forth meetings with them. And actually, we already had, we submitted a sketch plan to them earlier this month, and last week, we were in front of them to review the initial sketch plan. It was well received, and that's kind of the first step in that process. It also entails dealing with the County Conservation District on erosion and sediment control and stormwater design. So you'll see that ENS plans and NPDS permit down on the second kind of bar there. Below that, we are also underway with a traffic impact study. We hope to have that wrapped up beginning of the year here, but that's another component that'll need reviewed and approved as part of this process. And then on the bottom, you'll see there's sewage facility planning module. We have to go through Department of Environmental Protection and get the associated sewer modules approved with the local sewer authority. So various steps along the way, and you'll see there we're all targeting that June end date, and that's when we're trying to anticipate going out to bid. Fidavia always emphasizes that we want to get ahead of the market. It's a really good bidding climate right now. We're not sure how long that's going to last, especially as we come out of this COVID. No one has the crystal ball, but right now we're in a really competitive bidding environment. We're seeing some really good pricing. So we want to take advantage of that and certainly push the approval schedule as much as we can. Now, that being said, if we'll update the schedule along the way, if we run into some speed bumps or hiccups along the way, we'll certainly want to communicate those and update the schedule accordingly. One thing might be on the traffic side, if we have to involve PennDOT, if there's any required improvements to Route 22, we'll have to get PennDOT involved, which might drag out the schedule further. But there's ways we can look at making those a separate process and a separate construction project from the main elementary school. Any questions on the approval schedule here?
Yes, Scott. Is the time frame that you have for, I'm thinking the ENS plans and the NDPES permits, is that fairly typical for school districts, A, and then B, what sort of wrenches do you often see that might extend that?
Sure. That is typical. It's I would say is more on the aggressive side of things. Certainly these are all aggressive dates, but our engineers, civil engineer feels very confident they can achieve them. One of the challenges on the ENS side could be, depending on the infiltration rates we receive, be required to take your stormwater on site and manage a certain amount through infiltrating through the existing site. Our geotechnical team is actually going out later this month to do some test bits to test those infiltration rates. But depending on the results of those, we'll garner the stormwater design. If it infiltrates poorly and that our team has to go in a different direction as far as how we meet those requirements of infiltration, then it could involve DEP, Department of Environmental Protection, and go beyond just the County Conservation District. In that case, you could see extended review times. And just certainly with any state or or county or local authority, just dealing with the review process, the back and forth of, I'm sure that we're not the only plan in their queue. So depending on how their current workload and how many other plans they're reviewing and how quickly they get to us really is going to determine if that schedule is achievable. Did I answer your question?
It does. Do you have experience right now with the DEP and how they're getting through a caseload under the circumstances?
I'm not. Was your question what's the current DEP caseload?
Yes, in the event the DEP had to get involved, what's their current? How are they getting through their caseload right now?
I'd have to check with STECBEC on that. Usually DEP on the stormwater on the ENS side isn't common to have them. Usually you're dealing with conservation district. It's the abnormality to go through DEP. So I'll have STECBEC look into that and maybe make a couple phone calls just to get a feeling for what their current review time is and do they have a lot of work. I know on another project, not on the more on the waterway side, we had a project that had a bridge component to it, and it had to get approval through DEP that normally would have been a 6-month process, but because they were remote, a lot of projects stopped. It was like a 6-week process. It's kind of we'll have to kind of wait and see, but I can get them to talk to them ahead of time to find out what that review time might be.
Okay, thank you.
And there will be a drill. I believe the drill's going to be out here next week. So people may start wondering what's going on. If people are going to wake up, it'll wake up when there's machinery on that plot of land. But I believe it's next week they're going to be here.
Yeah, I think the 14th, yeah. Okay.
Scott, can you speak to the, my understanding, and I don't see it listed here. I see sewage facility planning listed here, but I don't see anything about the water supply. My understanding from the Bethel Township meeting is that there was some discussion about the water supply to the building.
Yeah, sure.
Could you speak to that? Sure.
And from an approval standpoint, really, there's nothing from the water authority that needs approved. They're not regulated by from an approval standpoint, but I believe my understanding, and STECBEC would know more about this, but is that they're currently upgrading the water lines throughout the region, and that project is set to be completed, I think, in 22-23. So the question was, what's the timing of that with the timing of construction of the school? So that's something we'll definitely need to keep an eye out for. But as far as in the actual process of approvals, we don't have to do any formal submitting to get those approved. You're essentially, whenever you bring on new water service, you'll pay the EDUs, and this is a simple application. But that's definitely a good point. This one we'll have to keep an eye on to make sure that that those new lines are installed in time for the school construction.
And STECBEC is also doing that project.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
they're involved in both. So I know they've communicated about it.
But that could delay things significantly if there's not enough water for the building potentially.
Correct. And that's, yeah. My understanding from talking with Chad after the meeting where they made that comment was that the improvements are in the process of being made, where there will be enough capacity for the school.
Stacy, I wrote down, I have the DEP and the water lines question for STECBEC. So we'll get them to give us some more insight on that.
Okay. Any other questions on the schedule? We can go to the next slide. So I hit on some of these already, but just to give you kind of where we've been in the past month or so, and what we're looking, the major milestones looking ahead. So we basically finalized the overall floor plans and site plans. You saw those last month. I mentioned the traffic study is underway. I mentioned the planning commission meeting, and STECBEC is underway with their land development drawings, and they anticipate submitting those in January to Bethel Township. We've completed the HVAC systems analysis. We actually had a long meeting today with your admin team and Mason to go over those in detail. Looking ahead, we have an upcoming faculty meeting with the teachers to review the interior room layouts. We've developed interior room layouts that we're going to be taking to the next step as we develop the design. I mentioned the geotechnical investigations. They'll be doing the infiltration testing, but they'll also be doing borings on site. So they'll have a drilling rig to do borings to test the soil capacity for structural design. We're going to start looking at exterior building design. We hope to bring you something in the next board meeting from a conceptual standpoint. And we're going to finalize the Act 34 booklet. So speaking, you can go to the next slide. Speaking of the Act 34 hearing and booklet, I'll just touch a little bit on what the purpose of the Act 34 hearing is. It's an Act 34 of 1973. It's PA state law that anytime a school district builds a new school or constructs significant additions to an existing school, they have to have a public hearing, basically to convey to the public the intent of the school district, the school board. So as part of that, we'll develop a booklet that will be made available to the public prior to the hearing. And the content of that booklet is dictated by this Act 34. And it gives an overview of the project, talks about the need, talks about the options considered. So the options that we looked at in the facility study. It'll go through a detailed description of the project. We'll show the floor plans and the site plan. We'll get into the cost. And you'll see when we review the booklet in January, the cost gets to be into different forms than what you've currently seen. It gets to be a lot more detail. And your financial consultant will be there to talk about the tax impact to your taxpayers. And then at the end, we'll receive public comment. This is a hearing, so it's not a formal board meeting. The board is encouraged to be present, but it's not a voting board meeting. There'll be a hearing that'll be conducted by us, your solicitor, and your administration. And then 30 days after the hearing, you'll be receiving more public comments. So really, the purpose of this is to really inform the public, which you've kind of already been doing along the way with your 2 separate public meetings and your board updates, and then also to receive and hear comment from the public. Now, I will say the way the requirement of the Act is garnered with the amount of information that you have to show in here and the detail of it, you have to be so far along with your design in order to develop that level of detail. So it's not something that you have at the beginning of the project. It's kind of like halfway through the project or a third of the way through the project, because you have to get to a certain level of detail to establish the maximum building construction cost. So one of the things you'll be doing in January is approving a resolution that will adopt a maximum building construction cost. That's part of the requirements of the Act. And that maximum building construction cost will be held throughout the duration of the project. And then when we receive bids, you'll have to be within 8% of that construction cost. If you're more than 8% over on that cost, then a second Act 34 hearing will be required. So that's another reason why we have to be further along with the design, further along with the detail to know more detailed costs. Any questions on the hearing itself or the booklet? Okay.
Hey, Scott, it's Chad.
Yeah.
Hey, sorry, I just was able to join here. I wanted to make sure I didn't miss anything regarding the schedule for the land development.
Okay, good timing. So there were 2 questions that you can address. One was timing of should we have to go through should the conservation district go to DEP for a review? Do you have an idea of their current review times and what that'll do to our schedule?
So from an NPDES standpoint, I would say I'm about 80 to 85% confident that we will not have to actually go through DEP for the review of this permit. there are two reasons why we would have to. The first one is the infiltration rates. If we get no infiltration rates, in other words, we can't get any water to percolate into the ground within our stormwater basin, we have to go to a different design concept called managed release rate. That will kick us into a DEP review. That would be the more likely option if we have to go to DEP. The second option would be if DEP considers this project basically either substantial enough or the impacts to waterways of the Commonwealth and this type of project within this location, I don't see that part being an issue because we're not impacting wetlands, we're not impacting waterways, or we're not even adjacent to any. So the only reason I would see us going to DEP is if we absolutely had no rates. And then that would have to be literally zero rate. If we even get a little bit of a rate, we can go with an infiltration design and avoid them. So I'm pretty confident that we will not have to go to DEP here, which increases the timeline dramatically. I would think if we stay with the conservation district, that from the time we submit to the time we obtain our NPDES permit is probably about 3 to 4 months, as opposed to a year, if not longer.
Okay. And then the other question was pertaining to the when we presented the sketch plan at the Planning Commission the other evening, there was a comment about the availability of water and having enough water capacity for the school. Can you speak to the schedule of the anticipated improvements and what's to be improved?
As far as the schedule goes, I'm not sure where the actual permitting is. That is something I do need to look into a little bit harder, but we are in the middle. STECBEC Engineering is, as we are the design engineer for the Fredericksburg Sewer and Water Authority, working on a new water main that is going to it's going to be installed on this property in the setback right adjacent to Airport Road. That is going to increase the capacity that the authority has from a water standpoint. So that I don't know when that water is going to be installed and available. I suspect that it's easily going to be ready to go before we need to have it for the school to be operational. But let me look into that, and I know I got to get some of the design guys an email on this as to where we're at with that. But that's where that is. Currently, they just don't have the water to service the building, but we're far into the design process on that.
Okay, thanks, Chad. Any other questions from the board for Chad? Okay, so we can go to the next, Kirk. The next couple of go 2 slides ahead. We'll just briefly hit on the athletic improvements. This is the latest iteration of the field house design. We had a request to look at what it would look like to have the football team room also located here. And as we begin to have more information on the siting and more feedback from your athletic director and your admin team, we're kind of tweaking the layout, but this is our current configuration. We're trying to open it up to both fields. That's why you're seeing the display there, the multi-purpose turf field in the stadium itself. So you can see the entrance between the 2 buildings, and then off to the left, some of the components you already saw last month with the team rooms, the concessions, the storage, ticket booth, and things like that. Off to the right, you'll see the toilet facilities that are required to support the stadium. And then you'll see that football team room. Once again, this is just the first pass at it, just to try to get an idea of scale and cost. And then some officials team rooms to the right. Go to the next slide. So this kind of gives you an idea how that might site within the overall context of the stadium and the multi-purpose fields. There you can see the concept that we developed, that STECBEC developed for the synthetic turf practice fields. This is in coordination with talking to your athletic director and how he would arrange practices and games for that. Looking at bleachers on to the hillside side of things, and things like lighting of the fields and associated amenities. So go to the next slide. And then from a cost standpoint, I think I showed this last time, but this kind of breaks it out a little bit more in more detail, gives you some more line items to see kind of the range of where some of these costs lie. So there you can see the top line is the field house proper. That's basically everything with the exception of the 2 game team rooms and the football team room. You'll see the separate line items from there below. So the game and visitor home and visitor team room at about $500,000, the football team room just shy of $500,000. Then we have some general site construction costs for sidewalks, fencing, things like that. And then the turf, the practice fields, as you saw them in the previous site plan, is around $1 million, and that includes the turf itself plus the stormwater management that's required to handle those fields. Bleachers at around $100,000, starting with a number of 400 seats. Lighting another $100,000, and then you can see our usual escalation contingencies and soft costs. So right now, with what we saw in front of you, we're looking at a total cost around $4.7 million. And this is kind of just meant to give you more information to help you make decisions as far as what you want to include or look at with the association of the athletic improvements.
And just to clarify, that one locker room that says football connected to it, yes, it would be able to be used for football in the fall. And the advantage of it is it also is connected to an equipment storage with shoulder pads and uniform storage. But in the spring, we would utilize that for one of the other athletic teams. So it doesn't necessarily become theirs. If I had an outside sport in the winter, we'd put someone else in there too, but we don't. So it would be used differently depending on the season, but it would be designed to be able to house the football team, which would take them out of this building completely from a locker room standpoint, creating additional space up here.
Yeah, I think Dr. Metzger hit on a key thing when you're taking on a new field house and going to have to build already toilet rooms and concessions and other things associated with it. The economy of scale makes sense to do the most bang for your buck so that you could free up space where you really need it, which is at the middle school, high school complex. So. Any questions on the athletic improvements?
Scott, I think you just said it, but that field house includes concessions, right?
Correct, yes, concession. And we sized that similar, so you have a pretty robust concessions stand there, so we sized it to be at the same size for what you currently have. Okay, I believe that was the last slide of mine, so. Are there any other questions for me at the end? If not, I'll let everybody get on with the rest of their agenda. Thanks for your time. See you next month and have a happy holidays and safe New Year.
Thank you.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
The high school students of the month for December are Emily Hauk and Emma Baumberger. This award is sponsored jointly by the Fredericksburg and Jonestown's Lions Club, and each recipient will be recognized at a future meeting of the Lions Club. Congratulations to them. The middle school student of the month for December is Catherine Eisenhower. This award is sponsored by the Northern London County Rotary Club, and each recipient will be recognized at a future meeting of the Rotary Club. And congratulations to Catherine as well. Do we have our student board representative, Eileen Zemba, online with us?
She'll be joining in just one moment.
Okay. It looks like she's on. Eileen, would you like to give your presentation? You'll need to unmute. It looks like maybe Eileen is having difficulty with sound. Do you think it might work if she leaves and comes back?
That may help. She is here as a panelist, and I see that she unmuted, but I also could not hear anything.
So she needs a separate link to be able to enter and speak, correct? Or
No, no, she is here as a panelist, but no, I think perhaps there's an audio problem on her side, but I'm not sure.
okay, maybe at the end, do you suggest that we try to loop back, or?
Yes, we can try that. I'll see if I can work with her to resolve it.
Okay, maybe we can pick her up at the end then. All right. Then we will move ahead to the superintendent's report.
Yeah, the big thing that I really feel like I need to spend some time on is this development of what the Department of Health and Governor Wolf decided over the past couple of weeks. As you know, I've communicated that there was an attestation form that school districts would sign and submit to the state. Michelle and I took care of that. Basically, you had two choices. You either agree to follow a couple of the different guidelines. One would be the new mask order, and then the other would be their recommendations for closing. And along with, in that mask order, there's several different things which I'll talk about in a second, but you either agree to do that and then are allowed to continue face-to-face instruction, or you say, no, we don't agree, and then you go completely virtual. You know, they're saying that, you know, this is a way they're going to hold schools accountable. If you don't follow these rules, then they're going to force you to go virtual. And they talk about the fact that they'll be, you know, paying attention to what's going on. You know, I appreciate the guidance. Certainly, we've been looking for some metric, some way to determine when to close. You know, how to make decisions for that. But it does require some work, as everything that has come down from the state. It does require some work on our end. I'll first talk about the mask. You know, I think the three big things that for us that we have to pay attention to are: one, that face shields, just for the sake of wearing a face shield, are no longer okay. They're still okay if they're a medical exemption, but they have to be worn in conjunction with a mask now. So we've communicated that already to teachers. We're in the process of determining which of our students typically have worn a face mask and identifying them. And then we are cross-referencing that with the list of medical exemptions that we already have on file. Once we've done that, then we will reach out to any other students or families that we need to explain that they now have to begin wearing masks. So we're taking that approach. That'll be done by the end of the week. There aren't a ton of students, but there will be some that will have to go from their face mask, face shield, I'm sorry, to a mask. I think I've been saying face mask, but face shield to a mask. Another one is athletics. You've seen the guidance on probably in the order about athletics wearing masks. We are working with coaches right now. I have our trainer working with Dr. Andre to develop procedures for this. We certainly don't want to put anyone at risk that may have a medical condition. So we're trying to work on a document that coaches can work through step by step to identify those kids that shouldn't be in a mask because they may have asthma or some other items. And the other component to that, though, is, you know, kids that certainly can, they're going to have to try to wear this mask. And I actually got, Brooke, you'll be happy to know, I got the same guidance from Brooke that I did from Dr. Andre and from Jeremy, our trainer, about, you know, if kids are in the midst of, there's a clause in there about exertion. So if they're in the midst of a game and they're having trouble catching their breath and they need to, you know, to do this to catch their breath, that's okay. We don't want to put anybody in danger in terms of taking a deep breath. And you know, the guidance from Dr. Andre and from Jeremy are that even if that kid's, you know, takes that down till the end of the quarter, they come out, they give it the timeout, they catch their breath, and then they try again, that is certainly okay. So we're working on some guidelines for that. Brooke, did I cover that pretty well? Is that?
You covered it beautifully. And I think for the board to know, there are sports specific, task specific, and individual specific exemptions that we're working through. We are not without options. But it's a process, and I'm really happy to hear that your physician is a great partner, because that's critical.
And I will say that the sports-specific exemptions right now do not include basketball or wrestling, our winter sports. So right now we're giving it a shot. We're trying to experiment with some different face masks for the kids, and trying to come up with some procedures there to make sure we've followed the order to the best of our ability. The other thing is lunches. Just confirming that we have 6 feet in the elementary school in some of our rooms, and we don't have tons, but we have some rooms that are around 20. And the guidance is at lunchtime they have to have 6 feet. So that old saying of as much as possible is no longer the case when it comes to lunches. Now, we've already adjusted and made any adjustments at the middle school. I believe we have a plan for the high school. And Mr. Rizzo and Mrs. Dr. McInerney are working through the elementary. I do believe that in most cases we're fine, but we do have some plans to make a couple little adjustments. There may be some classrooms where a couple of kids eat in a different location in order to make sure we have that 6 feet. So we'll take care of that. You all probably know about the travel, the 14 days, and we're certainly, you know, we have forms now for students and for staff to fill out before returning. Nurses and secretaries are working with families that are talking about travel to make sure that we've covered those bases. We did have some employees travel over the weekend. Most of them got a negative test so they could come back, and we do appreciate that. And then, you know, probably the big one that we're attesting to is these recommendations for school closures. To give it to you in a nutshell, and I can send you the form actually so you can look through it more carefully. It's on the PD website, but they now have, and I think this is probably the best thing they've done, is there's different numbers by size of school. And it's not the one size fits all. And let's face it, that East Hanover, as much as we love East Hanover, is not the same size as Central Dauphin High School. So to say that those two had the same numbers in the past didn't make any sense whatsoever. So now the ranges for us, the important ranges are that we have all of our elementary schools are in the small group, and our middle school, high school, which is considered one building because they're connected, are in the large group. Which is over 900. In the elementary school, the range for a short-term closure begins at 2 to 4 cases. We believe at 2 cases, we need to have a conversation with the Department of Health to explain the cases and then to determine if there are any circumstances that would warrant not closing. And I do believe, and I spoke with Brooke the other day, that there are some scenarios that that's the case. For instance, we had 2 cases at Jonestown at one point, but the second case came a week later and was someone who had been quarantining because of a household member, and they had no contact. So I don't know that in that case, the Department of Health would have said 2 cases shut down. They may have said, let's wait and go another case. At the high school level, it's 6 to 10 cases. We would have hit that over the Thanksgiving break if we weren't closed already. Now, what they're saying is that when we close, we must wait 24 hours and then we must clean. And then after that point, if all contact tracing is done and we've identified, done the case identification, once we've completed that contact tracing and the cleaning, that we can then open back up. And that may be a variety of days. If you get 8 in one day, that contact tracing is going to take a little while. The other problem that we're running into is that tests are not coming back in a timely manner. We had one student who received their test results on the 29th. They were tested on the 21st. Now that presents a boatload of problems for us. Now thankfully it was Thanksgiving break, but all of those close contacts were not able to be notified until really the 30th, because we got called at about 9 o'clock at night on the 29th. And by that point, they were coming back in 3 more days. The person that actually tested positive was coming back today. Yeah, today. So it because of when their symptoms started. So that delay is really a problem. But regardless, we have some numbers, and we'll, we've made the commitment to follow those, and that's what we'll do. As we work through this week, I want to get all that information out to parents in a manner that they can I don't want to overwhelm them. I'll probably put some links if they want to read further, but I'll try to put it in a manner that they can understand and see in a simple kind of layout of here are the adjustments that schools need to make right now. So we'll communicate that as the week goes on. Before I move on to one more little thing, do I have any questions about that?
Is the 6 foot rule able to be met? And like, I know you said at lunchtime, it's no longer an option. They have to be 6 feet. And I think you said the middle school, the classes are smaller. So the 6 foot rule is pretty much being met at all times in those classrooms. Or no?
Our close contacts have been minimal. And I'll give you one example. And I can't say that it is always 6 feet. And the problem, Nate, is that we divide up, by alphabet, but kids can go to one class and have 6 in it. And just because of the nature of the classes, the next class, they could have 15 in it. And so it does vary. And the 6 feet isn't always attainable. There have been close contacts identified. Now I will say, I'll give you one example, but there's multiple examples. And I think I sent an email saying that in the cases that we had, over half of them had no close contacts, and that's great. That's what you want. We had one though that they had 8 classes scheduled. 5 of the classes had no close contacts whatsoever. 2 of the classes had a total of 3 between them, close contacts. But the last class had, I don't know if I'll remember the number exactly, but 5 or 6 because of the pure volume of kids in that room. And you could have some kids, depending on their classes, that it's pretty good. We had a situation the other day where it was a class that we only offer one section. And so the numbers are a little higher in that class. They had 1 close contact because they work at tables together, and there was a close contact there. So the close contacts have been minimal, but till you go through, the bus or how they got there. In one case, it was there were multiple kids riding together in the car, and they weren't related to each other. So when that happens, and that's not, we can't control that, but we can, when that happens, you have that whole car has to quarantine. But we've had a lot where there's been minimal, and then we've had some where, where we've had other close contacts identified. So it varies, but I think in general, we do a pretty good job with it. I know there's other places that are quarantining 85 kids. Its Garden Spot had 200 kids quarantined in one shot in a week. So, we certainly are not at that numbers. I think the hybrid helps dramatically, but I can't say it's perfect.
Gary, on the testing side, do we direct them towards a certain place to test? Is there a specific test they must do, a type of test? What are there any kind of rules around that to try to keep the test coming back in a timely fashion?
No, I will tell you that that has been mostly up to the doctor. Most of these cases we don't even know about until,
Yeah.
until they call us and say we're positive.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of the positives that we've gotten have been because they've been close contacts with someone at home, that we wouldn't typically even know it, other than the fact that they were quarantining.
Sure.
But yeah, that's usually done by their doctor, and some take the rapid test, which certainly helps us with contact tracing, but a lot don't. Yeah.
So
Anything
is it your impression that that the Department of Health is at least listening to or paying attention to the fact that an outbreak may not be taking place within the school?
I think that depends on who you talk to at the Department of Health. I will tell you that through my conversations, you don't get consistent information from one person to the other. Look, there were 2 Department of Health that I think, that sent messages saying don't close down. The CDC director, if you saw that, said don't close down. But yet there's people on the other side that are respected people, medical people, that are saying, the transmission is high and schools should go virtual. So it's still a mixed bag of people. Brooke, I saw you shaking your head. Do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, so I would just say in school districts in central Pennsylvania that we represent, so if you put like 30 districts in that loop, what we're seeing across the board is that 90% or maybe even more of the transmission that's occurring is all community spread based. For the most part, there are a few exceptions. Cafeteria in one school district was identified as a hotspot. I think that's what ultimately got us that 6-foot distancing in the cafeteria, because kids were unmasked and they were together for longer than 15 minutes. But for the most part, it is absolutely community spread. That is really the only way that the virus is coming into school. Like, I can't even name more than just a handful in 30 school districts where we're like, we know that there was a positive case as a result of a positive case in school, sharing school buildings, school air, school buses. It is, and it's no, I'm not trying to be critical of what's happening in the community, but the booster club meetings and the parties on the weekend in the high school and recreational athletics that aren't adhering to the same standards. There are a lot of different venues where people are getting together, weddings, family gatherings, what happened at Thanksgiving. That is almost always being isolated as the source of spread. It is remarkable that schools have become one of the safer ways and to sort of navigate the virus. And I don't say that in any political way. And I also don't say that to say that there isn't a time when we also, because of community spread, might need to close our schools. Like, that is where Gary's saying people are going both ways with that. It gets to a point in the community that I think the model now is it's putting in some stoplights for schools, because they believe at a certain point, what we're seeing in the community is beginning to incrementally come into the schools. And so we have some new levels now that control that. But as a whole, speaking really broadly, schools are doing a great job. I mean, that is really where mask compliance is high, cleanliness is high, organization is high. And you guys are a perfect model for that. You are not overrun with cases. You've had some ups and downs, but you are not overrun with cases. So I think that's really important to keep in mind. What we are doing outside of school is probably having the greatest impact on what happens to us when kids arrive at school.
Okay. Anything else on that one? All right. I wanted to end on a positive note. To share with the public, you should have got an invite from me. That we are now, we're going to move ahead and we're going to start working on some long-term planning. And I honestly am looking at it as a way to mentally shift gears, because I am tired of talking about COVID. And when this ends, I want the district to be prepared to take some steps forward, to be able to set goals for the upcoming year next year, and to start moving forward in some areas that we all know that we wanted to work on. So December 14th, we have a great deal of people that responded to my invitation today already. I believe we'll have upwards in the number around 50 people. We'll form 5 subcommittees to look at different components of district operations. We are going to try to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, even though our comprehensive plan is not due now till next year, the 2022. We're going to use the 5 categories that we use for the comprehensive plan, but we're going to put it together in a manner that's more easily understood than our state comprehensive plan is. We'll do that technical stuff later on when we have to turn that in. But I believe it'll be a great opportunity to look at our strengths and weaknesses as a district. In the meantime, as soon as tomorrow, and no later than Thursday, I will be sending that vision mission survey out to the public. It's going out to the teachers, and we've gotten their feedback. But I'm really looking forward to just starting to talk about the future and set some things in place for moving forward. So a little bit of a positive note to end on, but that's coming up in a couple of weeks. So. And that's the end of my report.
Thank you. Kirk, can we try to loop back to get Island back on? Is now a good time for that?
Yes, I have to re-promote her as a panelist, so we're going to try this again.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Switch over to video.
We started to hear you.
Island, we can hear sound under the Jennifer Zemba profile.
All right. Did you get it working? Okay. So this is Emma Bomberger, Olivia Treswell.
Can you turn the sound off on the Island device? If you turn the sound off on that device, you should be able to speak.
Do we need to use these?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Now can you hear me? Okay, good. Oh no, I can't hear them.
Oh.
Well, it didn't seem to be hooked up though now.
No, you're good.
Okay. So this year's homecoming court is Tessa Redinka, Emma Bomberger, Olivia Cheslock, Cassie Graves, Michaela Cupsis, and Jocelyn Mertz. This was chosen by the senior class. The whole high school student body has until this Thursday to vote for Queen by Google Forms. Holiday hall decorating will be December 10th. We are having a food drive with FFA through December 11th. We are getting a tree to decorate and are planning on some spirit days. Student council donated $1,100 to Service Club from the money that we raised during the King of Hearts dance last February. And I think that's it.
All right.
Thank you for that report, Island, and thank you for your perseverance to be able to deliver that to us. Have a good evening.
Yeah.
Is there any other old business to discuss this evening? If hearing none, I will move ahead to the public comment period. Those wishing to make public comment were asked to submit that request by 4 o'clock this evening via email or online form. Mrs. Martin or Dr. Messinger, do we have any public comment for this evening? No?
No.
All right, thank you. All right, then we will move ahead to our discussion items, which are items for board action. The first is the approval of the minutes. Did you wish to say anything about that, Dr. Messinger?
Just the minutes from the November meeting are there for you to approve.
All right, may I have a motion to approve the minutes as presented?
Motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? This is a unanimous roll call vote. Your vote will be recorded in the affirmative unless you say nay or I abstain. The motion has passed. We move on to item 9, budget and finance. There are 2 items for discussion. Dr. Messinger, do you wish to speak to those?
Yeah, the first one is the updated list of drivers employed by DB Fisher. And then the second one is the agreement. Fidavia has been with us since the beginning. However, we were using them on an hourly basis. And now that we're moving into more of the design phase and then through the later phases as well, if we continue with that, that they typically, that becomes a portion of the overall cost. So their agreement is there to approve. And I will say that Dan drove out to Bethel Township the other night and attended the meeting with us. So that was nice of him to do that, but they are with us every meeting and appreciate their help. And those are the 2 items for tonight.
May I have a motion to approve items 1 and 2 under budget and finance?
Motion to approve.
May I have a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? This is a unanimous roll call vote. Your vote will be recorded in the affirmative unless you say nay or I abstain. The motion has passed. There are no items for discussion or voting under buildings and grounds. So we will move to item 11, extracurricular. Dr. Messinger.
Yeah, just the approval of Nick Winters as a volunteer wrestling coach.
May I have a motion to approve the volunteer coach as presented?
Motion to approve the volunteer coach.
May I have a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? This is a unanimous roll call vote. Your vote will be recorded in the affirmative unless you say nay or I abstain. The motion has passed. Moving on to item 12, we have 2 curricular items there.
Yes, the first one is we had given to you the district emergency operations plan. Tonight would be the final approval. And the second one is an affiliation agreement between Point Park University, which is located out west in the state in northern Lebanon. I will say that now that kids are doing some virtual college work, more so than maybe attending on campus, that we are starting to see a few different universities that want to send us student teachers and things like that. So that agreement's on there as well.
May I have a motion to approve items 1 and 2 under the curriculum agenda?
Motion to approve.
May I have a second?
I'll second.
Is there any discussion? This is a unanimous roll call vote. Your vote will be recorded in the affirmative unless you say nay or I abstain. The motion has passed. Moving on to item 13, we have several human relations points. Dr. Messinger?
Yes, the first is Kyle Wall is a classified substitute. He's going to be helping our tech department from time to time We've had unfortunately, some quarantining to do this year, and that puts us a little behind the 8 ball with technology, particularly as we're using so much of it. He has been a student that we have used in the past. He's now a graduate, but we're going to use him as a substitute to help us take care of tickets and things like that when needed. Also, we have 2 leave requests for you. Chelsea McCarrick from East Hanover and Dr. Wenger, who'll be out for a little bit there to enjoy his new one that's coming soon. Also have a resignation of Karen Whitman as the middle school instructional assistant. Also employment, the long-term employment of Mark Bernal. That is to continue the year. He's been here for the first part of the year. That's to continue the year with the resignation of Mrs. Marchione. And then also 2 mentors there for you to approve. I think that's it. Oh, on the back, there are a couple of informational items. Kim McFeeters will be filling in for Taylor Bixler while she's on leave in January. Sandy Miller is reassigned to Jonestown, and Gene Bolts also is moving from part-time high school PCA to part-time high school instructional assistant. Those don't need to be voted on, but they are informational items for you.
May I have a motion to approve items 1 through 5 as presented?
Motion to approve items 1 through 5.
May I have a second?
I'll second.
Is there any discussion? This is a unanimous roll call vote. Your vote will be recorded in the affirmative unless you say nay or I abstain. The motion has passed. We move on to item 14, reports from our representatives. First up is our Career and Technology Center. Director Klein, do you have a report?
I have nothing to report this month.
All right, thank you. Then we move on to the IU13 representative, Director Murray.
I have nothing to report this month.
All right, thanks. And then our legislative PSBA liaison, Director Sakeli.
Nothing to report.
All right, thank you. Is there any other new business this evening? A few informational items. Our next meeting is January 2021, and our Act 34 hearing is February 3rd, 2021. May I have a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Second. Any discussion? This is a unanimous roll call vote. Your vote will be recorded in the affirmative unless you say nay or I abstain. The motion has passed. This meeting is adjourned, and I wish you all a happy and healthy holiday season, and I look forward to seeing you all in 2021. Thank you.
Holidays.